Well, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for coming out and for braving the traffic. We're really excited to have you. Hi, I'm Will Roberts. I'm the Senior Vice President for Rights and Justice at the Center for American Progress. Really happy to have you here with us for this conversation. We are happy to be back on the Vineyard, bringing this conversation to you today and having a couple of other events this week. So we look forward to seeing you and for dialoguing with you about the important work ahead. I want to bring up CAP's President and CEO, Patrick Gaspard, to kick off our panel in a minute, but I want to thank a representative from Congressman Auchincloss, hope I'm saying your boss's name correctly, for being here. Thank you so much, for the Massachusetts delegation. So I want to bring up our President and CEO, Patrick Gaspard, to kick us off. Patrick.
Thank you so much for getting us started, Will, and we are all really excited at CAP that this is your first year here as the new Senior Vice President for Rights and Justice at CAP. So thank you and welcome, my brother. Good day, everyone.
Hi.
Good day. You know, I always love being up here because usually when you say good day to our folk up here, you're not just saying it in order to be polite. Instead, you're trying to manifest some kind of a grace to one another about what it means to represent and stand tall and courageous in the face of all kinds of corruptible things in the world. So good day, everybody. Good day. Yeah, that feels so good. So. It's exciting that we're now back at a time here on the island when folks are coming back together and congregating en masse. Last year, when we were all up here, people were still a little cautious about getting together and having conversation, but we seem to be on the other side of that challenge, and we're also on the other side of some profound economic challenges in this country as well. In a little bit, I'm going to introduce this sister who is to my right, who's part of the team that's responsible for the transformation that we're undergoing right now. But the progress that we're seeing in the country is real, it's legitimate, it is undeniable, and it's no accident. It's absolutely intentional. If you think about the suite of interventions that have been passed by the Biden-Harris administration, from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill to the Inflation Reduction Act to CHIPS and science, we have the largest expansion of healthcare in over a decade. We have the largest set of economic investments in a generation in this country, and the greatest environmental investment that we've had in the history of America. These are all intentional things, but we also need to be intentional about how justice and equity is centered in those outcomes as well. Because you all know, as well as I do, that there have been far too many times in our history when both political progress has been made and economic progress has been made, when some folks have been on the outside looking in towards that progress. There have also been moments of radical, revolutionary technological change and transformation in this country where, again, some folks have been on the outside looking in on that change. I think it's just an incredible moment that we have an administration that has said plainly across agencies, from the federal government to state government to municipal government, that there's going to be a through line that runs through all of these investments, both public and private investments, that's meant to turn around this question of generational asymmetries of access, of power, of wealth that too many in our communities have experienced. And this is at every single level. I was just looking at an investment that was made in Southwest Atlanta, what seems like a modest investment that's transformational. Investment of $10 million moving in federal resources that's enabling the communities in Southwest Atlanta to buy 25 new electric buses for school. Why does for school and public transportation? Why does that matter? Because that is a part of our country, a part of that community and our world that has been susceptible to all kinds of illnesses that are downstream from the emissions that are coming from public transportation. Now, in addition to those kinds of investments, we also have investments that are being made in communities, black communities, that in the past have been raised down in the name of progress and have divided communities. And now we're seeing a new incentive structure, again, from the public and private sector that's opening up new space. I'm thinking about places like Kalamazoo, Michigan, where a community that had formerly been divided by a roadway that was built that really kind of tore apart the old black community there. We're now seeing a new set of investments that's opening up avenues of opportunity and access for not just the whole community, but specifically small black entrepreneurs in that community who are getting a new kind of traffic there. It really matters at the smallest micro level and at the macro level as well. But we also recognize that despite the intent of this administration, if we ourselves don't do the important work of imposing our will in this moment, that we're going to have some profound challenges, particularly in the blue islands that are clustered in red states across the country, where there's going to be some resistance to the kind of investments, the kind of incentivizing that's being led by some of the folks who are here on this panel. So we wanted to have a conversation about opportunity, about those incentives, about what this moment requires of all of us who are in government and those who are in the private sector as well. And we want us to all together be able to think about, in the most creative terms, what is open to the next generation of leadership and wealth builders in this country as a result of this. Phil Thompson is here. Phil, former deputy mayor in New York, a scholar out of MIT. Spent some time in conversation with Phil and coalition of African-American mayors who were just trying to think about how this moment helps us to catapult and leapfrog past challenges. And Phil pointed out to them, you know, this is a unique opportunity if we think about what it means to build energy cooperatives and collectives in our communities, in places where we have real density, clusters of public housing, where suddenly community-based organizations that in the past have had to rely on the charity, the grant making of others, might actually be able to generate resources that's going to support their own organizing. So there's job building here, but there's a way to put some scaffolding around new institutions that can take our advocacy into the future. So it's an exciting moment. It's a great time, but let's not lose sight of what it means to not do this work. A few months ago, I found myself in Columbia, South Carolina. I was in a conversation with about 500 low-wage workers who came together from across the Deep South to talk about what it might mean to build collective agency and collective power now. And I found myself talking to overwhelmingly women, mostly black women, who are working in sectors where they're making, you know, subhuman wages, really, to serve all of us. And in those conversations, they, you know, would say to me, like, you know, we hear about these, you know, the word salad of things that you all have done in Washington, D.C., but we're not feeling it yet. It's not giving us the ability to build power, right? These are folks who are not interested in speaking truth to power. They want to build power on their own to transform lives in the South. And if we don't use this moment to help them build, to lift up their agency in the clean energy transition that we're undergoing, and all of the other investments that we have, then shame on us. So thank you so much for coming out, joining this conversation, and hearing from these brilliant and beautiful folk about how we're going to do this hard work. I'm going to start with this sister. She needs no introduction. Of course, this is Shalonda Young, who is the director of the Office of Management and Budget. She previously spent 15 years as a professional staff member on the House Committee of Appropriations, where she went on to be the Democratic Staff Director. Of course, there's lots of work that she's doing that's visible to you all, but if you followed carefully the fiscal cliff crisis that we found ourselves in, one of the reasons why we didn't go over that cliff is because of this sister's diplomacy with some challenging actors on the other side. So Shalonda Young. We're joined as well by Mayor Frank Scott Jr. who has been the mayor of Little Rock, Arkansas since 2019. He is the first popularly elected black mayor of Little Rock, and he's worked to unite and invest in Little Rock's diverse communities during his time in office. During his leadership, Little Rock has added 8,000 jobs, and its population has topped over 200,000 for the first time ever, as folks are seeing this as a place of opportunity. Thank you, Mayor, for joining us. You know, Dr. Kelly Burton is a political scientist who likes to refer to herself as a serial social entrepreneur. She serves as the CEO of the Black Innovation Alliance. She has worked to found the Nexus Research Group and the Founders of Color as well, a digital platform committed to helping minority entrepreneurs grow and scale their businesses. Thank you so much, Kelly. Angela Hanks is the chief of programs at Demos, where she leads advocacy with a team of policy experts towards a more inclusive economy and democracy. Prior to joining Demos, she worked in the Biden-Harris administration as the acting assistant secretary of Empowerment and Training Administration at the U.S. Department of Labor. Throughout her career, she has really fought relentlessly to shake up the labor markets to make them more inclusive. And I have to add that she is a proud CAP alum. So thank you so much, Angela. And today's discussions is going to be moderated by one of my favorite people, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Jonathan Capehart. Jonathan has served on the editorial board of the Washington Post since 2007, and he's the host of a weekly podcast that has the really creative name of Capehart. He also anchors MSNBC's The Sunday Show with Jonathan Capehart. He, of course, frequently appears on PBS programs. And what I love about Jonathan is, of course, he's incredibly rigorous, as a journalist should be, but he also gives you a sense of who he's committed to and who he's in solidarity with. So thank you, Jonathan. I turn it over to you now to lead us away.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Patrick, for the introduction. I also want to say thank you to Jocelyn Fry, the National Partnership for Women and Families, who's co-hosting this event today. And it is 2:58. The mayor has a flight at 5:15, which means we got to get you out of here safely by 4 o'clock. So we'll talk for about 45, maybe 35 to 45 minutes, and then we'll throw it open to Q&A to the audience. And I'll ask some initial questions, but I really do, to echo what Patrick said, to have this be a conversation. But I'm going to go in rank order, Madam Director. To start with you, if memory serves, this week is the year anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act, which has done a lot for the American economy. There's also the infrastructure bill, the CHIPS and Science law. They've brought historic investments to infrastructure, clean energy, so forth, to communities. But how do these legislative accomplishments align with the administration's equity goals?
So one, thanks to Pat. Oh, mic. I forgot about the mic. I am loud anyway, so you may not need the mic, but if you're recording, you probably want me to use the mic. Yep, he said yes. But thank you to Patrick and Jocelyn for having me. And I give Jonathan a hard time, but I've been on Jonathan's show a few times, and I really do enjoy Jonathan personally, and I rib him a little, but I'm really glad to be here with him today, and I'm meeting 3 new friends, so this is a great panel. Who knew Martha's Vineyard had all you people here? I've been missing out. This is what happens when you grow up on the Gulf Coast and you like your water hot. But you will not miss me again. You have let a sister in. I've seen what's on the other side. I will be here. Maybe in the shoulder seasons, but I will be back. I'm a part of the President's economics team. And we are, as Jonathan put it, celebrating the year anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act. Just celebrate the CHIPS and Science anniversary. And of course, we had the infrastructure legislation. I will tell you, I've been in DC doing spending bills for over 20 years. I don't think any administration, Democratic or Republican, has seen this level of investment that this administration has the opportunity, and I say opportunity because money doesn't fix all unless you get it in the right hands to communities who have traditionally been left behind. And that's our goal. And as the president chides all of us in the cabinet, at every opportunity, these resources mean nothing if people who don't know they have access to their governments don't find a way to access these programs. So it's our job from the man to make sure this money, these resources, gets in the hands of communities traditionally left behind. And I always tell this story about Loudness County, Alabama, because it was not on my radar. New York Times did a big profile on this majority black community whose sewer is in their backyard. Look, before these bills, there was always money. I worked on these programs that went to states, and states got to control where this stuff went. This president said, that's fine and good, but I'm not approving these state plans, and I'm gonna use my bully pulpit to make sure these states do the right thing. You heard Patrick talk about these towns and maybe states that don't necessarily share their vision. We at the federal government have to do something to make sure people in those states get resources that they paid into and that they deserve. So I use Loudness County all the time as an example of having to hold these governors to account. Even when they get to run these programs, we at the federal government have tools, and we need to use all of them to make sure all these resources people hear about, but they don't feel. And it's our job to figure out why they aren't feeling it. And it's us talking about it, but also doing these things to make sure once it gets to the state, they do the right things. And that's one of the big things we're trying to do with the Inflation Reduction Act, with the infrastructure money, to make sure the Little Rocks, when they talk to their governors, that you have an avenue to also talk to us and let us know what's going on the ground.
That's a great segue to the mayor. So you are mayor. You have to deal with the state. Is the state doing the right thing to allow you to access the funds and the opportunities that are provided by the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, the infrastructure law that's been in place now for a year?
First and foremost, going back to what Shalonda said, this is probably the most consequential time to be a mayor in these United States. When you think about the countless millions of dollars that have been coming our way. I'm also the former, or not former, but immediate past president of the African American Mayors Association, which makes up about 1/3 of the national GDP. And so that's close to 500 mayors across the United States, as well as the top 4 most populous cities are ran by black men, black women. 10 of the top 20 are ran by black men and black women. And so that's something we need to recognize and uphold from that standpoint. And we say thank you to the Biden administration because they've listened to many stakeholders when we said, hey, we need direct access to dollars. And so one of the things that Shalonda did not mention was the American Rescue Plan Act, where we are been able to do many different things, whether it's creating a tiny home complex for homeless brothers and sisters, to senior citizen developments. We've been able to get direct access and direct funding because of the American Rescue Plan Act, on top of the Inflation Reduction Act, on top of the CHIPS Science Act, on top of the bipartisan infrastructure deal, which many times, because I'm a mayor of a blue island in a very red state, that my fellow congressmen have to come take a picture with me. And I'm often say, thank you so much to the Biden administration, as they're smiling right there with us. And so the answer to the question is yes, because there have been certain parameters that they have to deal with us now. There were different times where they couldn't, and they could shoehorn dollars from that particular perspective, but that has stopped as a result of the Biden administration, so thank you.
So, but more to the point, and yes, no, please, give him his, sorry. But the challenges, what are some of the biggest challenges maybe you don't face, but as the former head of the National Association of Black Mayors, which is why you look so familiar, because I think that's how we met. What are the biggest challenges your members, your former members, faced in terms of, again, accessing these funds?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is many times is technical assistance, because there are a lot of dollars out there. Little Rock is the largest city in a small state. But think about this, we're 203,000, our state's 3.2 million. There are a heck of a lot of other cities that are a population of 2,000, population of 15,000. And so they don't have access to grant writers to obtain different grants. For instance, I just got a text from one of my senior advisors that part of the CHIPS program is this regional tech hub application. We're submitting our application right now for $15 million. So when you see the application, so Little Rock is right here. I want to make sure you know that. I just want to make sure you know the name. No, but seriously, where we did this consortium of our city, the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, University of Arkansas Medical Sciences, our Venture Center, Philander Smith College, which is HBCU, which is a requirement that cities and states have to deal with our HBCU. So again, that's another intentional step by the Biden administration. And so Little Rock can do that. It's kind of hard for Earl, Arkansas, which is about 2,000. And so for organizations like CAP and others, please invest in these small cities, these small towns, because they are representative of the United States of America at this point in place.
Kelly, I'm going to come to you. You're sitting right next to me, but you know, a lot of what these new laws and programs celebrating their year anniversary do, it's not only about bringing equity to underserved and previously ignored communities, but it's also about reducing the racial wealth gap. And I know that that's something that is your work. That is part of your work. So what interventions should we consider so that Black people can flourish in the innovation economy? That's the word. That's what I was trying to. I couldn't remember, but it's these programs are about spurring the innovation economy. How do you make sure that Black people are a part of that innovation and are a part of that growth?
That's a great question. So I'll give you a little bit about Black Innovation Alliance. First, I want to say it is so good to see so many beautiful and friendly faces. There's a lot going on in the world, y'all. Lord Jesus, help us. So it's good to look out on a sea of friendly and beautiful faces. Black Innovation Alliance is a national coalition of organizations that support Black entrepreneurs, tech founders, business owners, and creative technologists who are working with emerging media. There are 116 of these organizations that are part of BIA, and they support approximately 400,000 entrepreneurs and innovators of color across the United States. At BIA, our work is really about creating the sort of ecosystem that is necessary for Black innovators and entrepreneurs to thrive. And our work really hovers at the systems level. 4 buckets: advocacy, research, narrative change, and capacity building. I'll focus a little bit on the advocacy. 2 years ago, we helped to launch the Congressional Caucus on Black Innovation with 3 congressional co-chairs, and the purpose of that was really to center this conversation around Black innovation because it happens in these silos, whether it's supplier diversity or AI or tech representation. And we wanted to argue that it's really about all of that. So let's figure out what is the through line and the thread, and offer up an omnibus package focused on Black innovation. So that's really the purpose of the caucus. We celebrated the anniversary of the caucus with a partnership with the White House, their initiative on Black Americans, because we knew that this money was coming down the pike. And what we consistently hear from our members is that every time there's some big allocation coming from the federal government, the money gets gobbled up by some large-scale white-led intermediary, or economic development agency or chamber of commerce. They might call the Black-led organization that is actually working on the ground doing the hard work to get their advice. No money, no checks, no budget for their support or their brain trust or their relationships or their network. And you look up and 3-5 years down the road, all the money is gone. And very little of it has actually trickled down to communities of color. So as part of this collaboration, we're working with the White House to do 3 things: connect folks to information, resources, and markets. So information, we've launched a webinar series, and you can find all this on our website. We did the very first in April, and the feedback we got was that no one from entrepreneurs, was that no one is telling us this stuff. No one is giving access to this information. And so we said, we've got to do it again. And then we are creating a digital repository. Hopefully we'll be able to announce our tech partner on this in the next couple of months. But it's a digital repository where it's a one-stop shop, right? Where if you're a Black-led organization or an entrepreneur and you're trying to figure out how you tap into federal government, you're operating in communities of color, you just come to this one place. It's going to give you the information that you need. And the last piece is that we are working to launch several trade delegations because the United States is one market of hundreds. And so how do we make sure that we're giving entrepreneurs of color access to global markets so that regardless what folks doing in the United States of America, they have different lanes towards wealth creation and closing this racial wealth gap?
That was and thank you for that. I got a lot more than I bargained for with that. Angela, before I come to you, I have to go back to Shalonda because it will impact, I think, what you'll say in response to the question I'm going to ask. So it's great, you know, all these great things, Inflation Reduction Act and CHIPS and Science and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill and the Justice 40, these are all great. However, we've got, and Congress is out until mid-September, and the fiscal year ends on September 30th. And the new budget's supposed to go in October 1st. And there's nothing that's happening. And in fact, read in Punchbowl this morning that Republicans are still pushing for funding levels in the next budget to be at fiscal year 2022 levels, which would amount to $100 billion in cuts across the board through the entire government. Could you please talk about the impact that would have on not just agency budgets, but on the economy, but also on the goals of the administration that have been so far positively outlined in the first part of this conversation?
So this is when I hibernate, because I expect a rocky September, and probably seeing you to talk about a little of that when we get back to DC. Look, it's in divided government, this is what happens. New incoming majorities with a lot of new people with a lot of new ideas that look exactly like the old ideas that we worked through 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 20, 30 years ago. And we know how this story ends. Those that are unreasonable to the American people, shut down government, can't even do their basic job, will lose this fight. They will also lose the fight when we tell people what this means. This country's fiscal path did not get ruined because we tried to enroll more kids in the Head Start or do more biomedical research at NIH. None of that was the cause of anything. I advise everyone to look at our revenues in this country and say our tax system is fair. I bet you cannot do that. So if they want to have a real conversation about the fiscal path, we are very excited to have that conversation. But we are not going to do this on the backs of people who need programs the most. And we're just not going to have that. So if we need to have a little time and a little cooling off period to do that, to remind them, by the way, we have this deal in place to avoid a first ever default on the debt. We said, let the spending process work out. They said, no, 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 we need to have spending caps in order to do our job of debt ceiling. We reluctantly agreed to do that. We came up with what was reasonable. They're now trying to go back on the deal. So one of the good things about the debt deal was we thought these top line deals allowed for an orderly process. What was I thinking? The same people who are unhappy about the debt deal now want to renegotiate it. We are not interested in that at all. And so if we have to have a bumpy September and a bumpy October, we're happy to do that. But we're going to stop having fiscal conversations on the back of those with the least. And that's what always happens in this town.
Mm-hmm. And so, Angela, this brings me to you because you are here to give the 35,000-foot view. So from a high level, what is the current state of our economy and how are Black people currently situated within it? And then if you have any thoughts, how will this bumpy September, bumpy October that we quite possibly could have impact that?
Yeah, so thanks so much, and thanks to Patrick and Jocelyn, and I'm really thrilled and honored to be here with all my CAP kinfolk. As Patrick said, I'm a proud alumna and really thrilled to be here with CAP and the partnership. So I can talk a little bit about the economy. I was trying to think about like, okay, general economy, what do I say? But here's what I'll start with. Compared to where we've been in the past, things are looking really good. We're at 3.5% unemployment. We are seeing wages outpace inflation for the first time since inflation spiked last summer, which means people are actually feeling those pay increases that they're getting in their pocketbooks, which doesn't happen when inflation outpaces wages. And we have these historic investments that the Biden-Harris administration has made that are going into effect. So the bipartisan infrastructure law is furthest along, but CHIPS and Science, IRA, are also kicking into gear. And of course, as the mayor mentioned, we have these historic investments in ARPA. And I think it's important to remember that all of those stats that I just mentioned are coming 3 years after the beginning of a global pandemic that spiked unemployment in this country to 14%. We're at 3.5% unemployment right now. That is truly incredible, and it is not an accident. That is a result of policy, intentional decision-making to rescue this economy from the brink of collapse. So when I was in the Department of Labor, one of my offices was the Office of Unemployment Insurance. One of the decisions that the Biden administration made was to ensure that people had access not only to unemployment insurance, even if they hadn't previously been allowed, but at a higher rate than they would have otherwise. And that meant people could stay in their homes. It meant they could continue to send their kids to school, put food on the table. All of those things were incredibly impactful and incredibly impactful for Black people, right? Like it helped us weather this crisis as well. And I think one thing that's important to think about when you think about the general state of the economy is that for Black people, we never truly get to fully share in the gains of a strong economy. So just as an example, the jobs numbers came out about 2 weeks ago. As I mentioned, overall unemployment is at 3.5%. Black unemployment is at 5.8%. Even at the lowest point it had ever been to historically since this has been measured, we were at 4.7%, which means in effect that Black people are always in a state of effectively permanent recession. If white unemployment was 5.8%, it would be the news story every single day, certainly in the lead up to the election, but certainly beyond that as well. And so when we're thinking about how to improve the economy for Black people, we have to start with how do we actually get numbers like that to come down and be good for us for the first time. And so I think these investments from the Biden-Harris administration can certainly help with that. And the commitment to equity in executing those investments is really critical. As Shalonda said, it's not enough just to put a lot of money on the table, although I have to say, one of the things I love about these investments is that it's a lot of money. But a lot of money isn't enough. It has to reach communities like the mayor's. It has to reach communities like the ones adjacent to the mayor's that have 2,000 people, that have 2,000 Black people who have never felt the benefit of federal investment. As Shalonda mentioned, we've sort of always seen federal investment in this country come at the expense of Black people, right? Whether that's the interstate highway system decimating our communities, whether that is the New Deal, this Faustian bargain created with Southern Democrats to exclude domestic workers, tip workers from the Fair Labor Standards Act. And this is a real opportunity to correct for those wrongs and help put us on an even playing field. So the next time we come out of an economic crisis, we can say 3.5% unemployment for white people and 3.5% unemployment for Black people. And that's not good enough. We need to go further. Does that answer your question?
I was silent because I was like, wait, you're stopping? You were on a roll, but you said a couple of things among many terrific things that I would love for the mayor and for Kelly to react to. You said about Black people, we never get to fully share in a good economy. I'm paraphrasing, but then the key thing was that you said Black people are permanently in a recession. Mayor Scott, I would just like your reaction to those two really incredible observations.
First, you got to say amen after that. I think one of the things I would say from a mayor's perspective, particularly a black mayor's perspective, I just recently touted the number of black mayors that we have in the United States. And many of us pay extreme homage to Maynard Jackson, Marion Barry, Coleman Young, Tom Bradley, Harold Washington, and the list goes on. Many of our premier cities of today, which are diverse in the economy, but clearly not where they want to be today, is because you had mayors that were very intentional in ensuring that everyone had a seat at the table, everyone had an opportunity to eat a piece of the pie, and you weren't going to scare white people by having a piece of the pie, particularly white business folks. And that's the main reason. If you look at Maynard Jackson, he could not find a job after his second term in office because how he disrupted the system and ensuring that everyone has an opportunity. I say that for this very reason. We have all of this opportunity, all of these dollars, and it's all for naught if we as black mayors don't do intentional things. Okay. What do I mean by that? A great example of how power is not used and or when you do not have the ability to understand that economic power begets political power begets economic power. I'm first elected black mayor of a city that's now 57% minority. 45% is black, the rest is Hispanic and Asian Pacific Islander. When I walked into the office 4.5 years ago, our procurement spend was 8%. Today, it's 35%. Intentionality. That's hard costs. You talk to John Rogers now of Aerial Investments and Melody as well, is we have to move from hard costs, which is contracting, construction, landscaping, office supplies, all great things. We now have to move to who are our lawyers doing the bond deals? Right. Who is the assets managers that we're working with? Who are our auditing firms? And why do I say all of that? That's the best way for many times to take advantage of the government spending to then use that as a piece of your portfolio mix to then do other things in the private sector. And so we as mayors have to do more of that. We have to have more opportunities. And so we're grateful for what's going on, but you have to have more intentionality. But it's not just us in the government sector. Those of us that are CEOs or number 2s or number 3 spots is we got to understand it's okay to be more than one of us. We have to have the ability to replicate ourselves, the ability to give more opportunities, and that's how we change the game as I see it, as we see it going forward.
And so, Kelly, I would love your reaction to what Angela said, but also pick up on what the mayor just said, the word he used, intentionality. And what you just said, Mayor, sort of echoes what Governor Wes Moore said at an event that I moderated with him yesterday, where he talked about how he is doing at the state level in Maryland what you just talked about that you're doing at the local level in Little Rock. So Kelly, how does intentionality factor into what you're doing at Black Innovation Alliance?
It's such a good question. I will tell you, one of our members last night sent me a YouTube link to a Claude Anderson, Dr. Claude Anderson, y'all familiar? Black Labor, White Wealth. And I went down a rabbit hole, y'all, and it's got my mind all up. So I'm trying to get myself together because I've been even further activated. But what I will tell you is at Black Innovation Alliance, we are 3 years old. In 3 years, we've gone from a staff of volunteers, totally grassroots, to a team of 25. We've launched 36 distinct activations, events, programs, and raised about $9 million. Shout out to Dr. Carr, one of our funders in the House Walmart. Appreciate y'all. The reason I mention that is because when we show up in these streets, people think we're a lot more grown than we are, right? Shout out to my members, Jessica. Who else is in here? Because we show up and we get stuff done, right? We execute. That's what we do really, really, really well. The reason I mention that is because this last week has been very, very difficult for our membership. As I shared, our members are Black-led accelerators, incubators, venture studios. Probably about 20 to 25% of our members deploy capital. So with the litigation that was directed towards Fearless Fund sent our ecosystem into a tailspin, where folks are like, Kelly, what we gonna do? And the thinking is because BIA has been able to grow that we really got the infrastructure to respond. But we don't. And I'm constantly in these rooms where folks are like, we need to collaborate, we need to coordinate. And I'm like, ain't nobody writing no checks for that. It's absolutely what we need to do. But we can't find, we've been pitching an infrastructure laboratory since day one because we don't know what the infrastructure looks like. So we gotta experiment, we gotta tinker. Crickets. So I bring it up because, to your point, in order for us to be intentional, we have to have the machinery, the communications apparatus, the mobilizing capabilities. So when things go down, it goes out, the hat goes in the air. Come on now. And everybody knows the assignment. Instead of when it goes down, we all turn like, what we gonna do? What we gonna do? I don't know. What you gonna do? I'm gonna write an op-ed. I'm gonna go on LinkedIn. I'm gonna call my friends. No, we gotta do better. Otherwise, we won't be able to be intentional. We won't be able to be strategic. And next year and the year after that, we'll be back here in the same position, have the same conversations because we don't have any power. No collective power. Folks got individual power and individual wealth. We don't have collective power and we don't have collective wealth. And that's where we really need to figure it out.
You just took us to church. And implicit in that is a call to action. So I would love for the mayor, for Angela, for Shalonda to give a reaction to what Kelly just shared, because it is, there's urgency in what you just said, but there's also, there's a lot of pain in what you said, but also pain, and this is just my reaction, pain because you're this close.
Yes. Yes, Jonathan.
You're this close.
Yes.
And yet you can't get there. So how do we collectively help Kelly get there? Mayor, Angela, Shalonda?
I'm gonna go back to what I said initially, and I'm gonna come from an elected official standpoint. There's so many more Black and brown elected officials here today. So we are here. The question is, what are we doing? And many times we have to understand that you have to make decisions that, irrespective of what it can happen to your current status or future election, and you do what's right, and understand that once you do what's right, nothing else matters. And so many times we have a lot of elected officials that are timid and they don't make the tough decision, the tough call, or even are intentional because they may not want to offend. They may not want to create some backlash for them politically, but you're actually doing more harm to the communities that need it most. And so I think the main thing that we as elected officials can do is understand that we are here for a season. We're not here for a career. Yeah, I just got reelected. More than likely I'll run for a third term, but if I don't, I don't, and it's okay. It's not meant for me to be mayor for 25 years. We have to understand, we have to get out of this notion of that, and we have to start creating political farm teams that whenever I decide to leave, by the good Lord will tell me when to go, is that there are other folks who are just as intentional, even more than I am. And that's what helps out those organizations that she's speaking of, is that so many times we're thinking about this individual mindset and not a collective mindset.
I don't have any solutions, and I'm probably just going to get more depressing, but I just wanted to share a couple of things. So Demos is an organization that works to advance an inclusive economy and democracy, and I don't think it's unreasonable to say that we're really facing a crisis of democracy at this moment, and that is truly an existential threat to Black people. So as an example, I think we all know this Supreme Court took away affirmative action in higher education admissions this past term. And the fallout of that has been really significant and has affected so many sectors of our lives and the economy already. Demos is a nonprofit. We're funded by philanthropy, and the way that's shown up for us is we've already seen a retrenchment. So, 3 years after the murder of George Floyd, all of these foundations, but I think this is probably true in the private sector as well, really wanted to show up for Black people and show up for racial justice, or at least show that they were doing that, right? And apparently they were so successful that they solved racism in the last 3 years. They forgot to tell us about it, but they did do it, so that's great. And what that means for us is that we have this horrible Supreme Court decision that really is going to have ripple effects across our economy and democracy. But what I really worry about is that it's causing folks who would call themselves allies to sort of prematurely give up. Something I've heard is like, what if the Supreme Court tells us we have to stop talking about race, or the Supreme Court said that we can't use race as a factor in anything anymore? And I think for the last couple of months, I've been jumping up and down like, that's not what they said. And for some people, the thing is like, you wish, right? Like you wish that they had made it easy to step away from your commitments to racial justice. It's sort of the equivalent of taking the Black Lives Matter sign out of your window after it feels like comfortable or safe to do so. But we know that that's not where we are in our democracy and our economy. And so I think we're still all kind of looking for solutions in this moment. But I think one is we've got to be really clear about what is legally allowed in this moment and what is not, and push back on the folks who try to tell us otherwise. And then the second thing is, there's a real moment to organize and to activate, to figure out what are the other avenues to build power and create change in our communities. So I think that's sort of the next phase of this fight. But in the meantime, I'm going to be, again, jumping up and down, screaming at the top of my lungs, that's not what they said. We can still fund equity, we can still fund racial justice, we can still support racial justice in our communities. And I think that is sort of the main thing that we've got to uplift right now.
Again, in the no solutions camp, because if somebody had solutions, we would have figured this out long ago. But this is why we have organizations like CAP, or we wouldn't be on this panel together, from very diverse spectrum of the problem, and where some solutions might lie. Like as you were talking about the court case, I think, how did we even get there? Where people go judge shopping, how did these judges get on the bench who are unqualified? Not my words, but the American Bar Association, and a Senate just moves them through. I know DC very well. Where we tend to stovepipe, we have lots of people working on lots of things, but where's the conversation where people from varied sectors go, what's your problem? What are your people feeling? Well, why do we still do judge processes the way we do? And a lot of times we aren't always in the same room. So part of the solution is to make sure we have conversations this way, which is why this is business mixed with a little pleasure, I'm sure. But it's necessary to make sure we find ourselves in the same room. And that's not always the case. How you doing? Good to see you. And yes, you. Because oftentimes, like I'm at the 40,000 foot level, and you can be intentional in public policy from a federal standpoint. I don't get to see things as they finish on the ground. And if you don't talk to people on a regular basis who are in those positions to tell me, you think it's working like that, that is not what's happening. And 4 or 5 levels from now, we're gonna consistently get it wrong. So it is my job, it is all of our jobs, and the former job you used to have, to get out and talk to people, to see if what we think we've done, that we pat ourselves on the back with, is actually doing what we think it's doing. And that's where these rooms matter. So thank you, those of you who put us in the same room, because we can find solutions. We have experiences that are just stovepiped, and we don't necessarily look at the problem from, I go straight to, like, how did we get here with the judge, with abortion rights? Where somebody can go create a nonprofit in Lubbock, Texas, in order to pick a certain judge to hear a case. These are new tactics, and we better catch up. I'm a big tactics person, and sometimes groups fight about tactics, and we get bogged down because we disagree on tactics. Sometimes I ask people who work with, I'm like, you just disagree with my tactics. Don't get stuck there. We're trying to get to the same place. I have different ways of getting there. Just trust me here and I'll trust you tomorrow. That's just a tactics question. Are we trying to get to the same place down the road? And we get real mad with each other. Let me tell you, the other side is very organized. They don't get bogged down in the same way some of us who are trying to get to the same destination get bogged down. We get mad. And we need to keep the dialogue open because they are organized. They have tactics we've never seen before, and we better do something to respond in kind and get in some rooms and break down stovepipes and have conversations like this. It's all about feelings. We have lots of good economic statistics, but there's something about the feel we're not reaching. And we need to figure out what that is and why that is. That's part of our job. Like, go out and talk. But if you tell me you've had these conversations and people aren't feeling it, why? And I can learn some of that in rooms like this. What aren't we doing? What aren't we doing? And reminding people Black unemployment is at 5.8%. Maybe that's why some of us aren't feeling what we think when you look at the macro numbers. So this is helpful for me to take back. It's helpful for me when we do federal spending at the federal level. We've taken our small disadvantage, I hate that title, but that is what we call it, small disadvantage goals up to 15%. We're trying to get to 11%. But again, I've had some of the same conversations. Are we sending it to the right lines of business where we're creating wealth? But I'll tell you, that's just one angle. We also need to make sure regular Black folks are getting jobs, including those who have not traditionally had access into unions, for example. We're trying to break down walls to these union jobs, get them apprenticeships. Those have not always been open to us. So we got to hit this from many angles. And that's what we're trying to do in the Biden-Harris administration. But I'll tell you, when you have many angles, the story is harder to tell, but it's worth doing.
I'm going to throw it open to questions in about 5 minutes. I'm going to give you my standard preamble. That please make sure the questions are short and no speeches. I don't mean to be rude, but if you slip into a speech, I'll interrupt you, and I'll be rude doing it. Just so you're forewarned. Shalonda, actually, Mayor, I'm going to come to you specifically on this question because Shalonda raises a very good point. That sometimes Democrats / progressives / folks who want to achieve certain goals are hardest on the people on the same team trying to reach those goals but have different tactics. How detrimental is infighting to achieving the goals that you're trying to achieve?
That's a deep question. But also, I'll be very honest. A lot of the infighting, Black folks in Little Rock and really across these other cities, it's not impacting us from that standpoint on what you may see on TV. The infighting, how it happens is that when you start infighting and the flow of dollars stop happening. And so that infighting creates this stagnation. That stagnation creates this period of a lack of flow of very significant dollars and programs and policies that we benefit from. And so many times the communities communities are not connecting with what AOC said yesterday. We all get caught up in this bubble, what we see on your television show and others, but many times that's not what's happening from a very ground level community standpoint. And so that's why you saw many times during the previous election where you had certain communities that were with 45. Just being honest. Because they didn't say, well, this administration didn't do anything different. That administration didn't do anything different. We're still at the same level. And so we have to connect those dots and say, okay, we are increasing our status because these things have happened. And I think the Biden administration has done a great job of connecting that, because when we were all in the pandemic, which was less than 2.5, 3 years ago, we were all forced to ourselves and had to figure out, how do we get out this box? And I think that Democratic leadership, not only through the pandemic, but everything afterwards, showed that people were front of mind. And I think we have to do a better job of communicating at a very simple level on what has happened. If we do not do that, that's how we lose in the battle of progressive policies. So we have to move from the protests and the platitudes to policy and action, but making certain once those policies go into action that you take credit for it and help others understand this is why it's happened.
Kelly, I would love to get your reaction to infighting and how it may or may not. And you don't have to. I don't know if we have enough time for the answer that you, given the look you just gave me. Give me a hand or mic. You don't have to answer it.
I will say there are hard conversations that we need to have in the Black community. Say that. There is generational stress. Yes. We need to have those conversations because there is a lot of infrastructure to organize that has not kept well over time. So in terms of a legacy of, I keep coming back to this word, infrastructure, many of us younger organizations are having to start from scratch because what worked 30 years ago ain't working today. So my yearning is for us to find safe spaces to have hard conversations amongst ourselves so we can stop over here and just keep it real so we can move on.
Okay. You know, I can feel, you don't know that, I can just feel it right here. As soon as you have to open, you don't even have to open your mouth. You just, oh no, I know.
And it's a lot we have to figure out, and the urgency is real, and it's a deep desire. You know, when you're leaders in the space, you're always trying to problem solve, like, what's the way forward? What's the way forward? How do I figure out who do I need? What do I need to do? And to your point, there's so much learning on the job every single day. Running this organization, running our organizations, right? Every day you're learning, you have to recalibrate how you think and strategize. And so it's kind of like, how do we, do the heavy lifting and do the hard work to kind of clear the way for what we need to do? Clear the way. That is the goal. Clear the way. We're going to go to the Q&A. We got 16 minutes. Since I see your hand there, but I'm going to come to you second. I'm going to go to the yep, right here now. Hold on. Well, two things. Hold on. Short questions, and for the young lady with the mic, do not let go of the mic. Please.
No, I'm good at this. Don't.
Oh, okay.
I got you.
Okay.
Okay. So, this is, first of all, thank you all. This has been amazing. But for Kelly, when you're talking about infrastructure, and I understand exactly what you mean, but there are legacy organizations like NAACP, the National Urban League, Coalition of Black Women. All these organizations have been around forever. Are they not playing a role? Do you see a role for them to be able to support the direction that you're trying to go, are they there for you?
Are you trying to
Okay.
beat up going on?
That's the next question. All right.
Okay.
She got funders, y'all. It's gonna be.
Okay, hold on. Because the mayor really does have to leave. So instead of 15 minutes, we've got 5. So the woman here in the straw hat, who is actually the first person to put her hand up, she's got the next question.
Okay, that's okay. That's fine. I want to thank the panel. You guys did a wonderful job, and our moderator as well. So my question has to do with actually to Shalonda. Yeah. Okay. I love everything you were saying, and the fact that you have, you're up there seeing everything from this high level. But some of the things that happen within the community that is not being seen. For example, we have funding that's out there, but then to be able to get that funding, it's a lot of red tape that individuals in those communities have to provide information, and they don't have the wherewithal to provide it. For example, when we had the COVID, and there was ability for people to have their rents paid, they had to find receipts and so forth, right? A lot of those people, they don't have accounts. They're paying the Cash App and so forth.
Question.
And yes. Then also Newark now they have rent control for owner-occupied properties, right? Now, wealth is a way for us to build, real estate is a way for us to build wealth. What can we do to make sure this is really happening, that we're not impeding it? Our government is not impeding it.
Yeah, the housing program is a great example from COVID. Money set, unobligated, and Congress loves to, if you're an administration sitting on money that's not going out for rental, trust me, we hear about it. That is a way not to ever be trusted with resources again. That's why this president really believes in, when you have ARP, you have these other bills, naming a specific person to bird dog all these issues that come forward. Don't leave it to just the government to figure out. He wants a name to be responsible. So the rental program, Gene Sperling, who I think is probably in every state dealing with ARP issues, had to get on this rental program and figure out why it was not working. Some landlords made it work for them and not people living in their places. And I think by the end of that program, we were, the wrong problem to have is not to get to people. We then had the opposite problem where a lot of jurisdictions ran out of money to help people. I would rather have that problem. But it took us probably a year to figure out what we needed to do to clear some of the paperwork backlog, but we figured it out. And one of the things Joe Biden really believes in is naming a point person for these big pieces of legislation, Mitch Landrieu for infrastructure, Podesta for inflation reduction. And I think it matters because they are personally responsible to him and to all of you. There's one name. It's not 10 agencies. It is that person. And I think that model has served well. And the president learned that as vice president when President Obama asked him to work on the Recovery Act legislation. So I think that model is the best to make sure one person, not an entire government, can pass the buck. One person's responsible.
Okay, real quickly.
I just want to add, I also think it's important for government to learn and adapt. So in my office at the Department of Labor, we do a lot of grants around employment and training. And one of the things that we did pretty early on into the administration was go to people who we thought represented potential grantees to ask them why they weren't going after our grants. So like, what's hard about the process? What makes it difficult? And there's a real balance to strike. Like, we are stewards of your money, right, as government employees, and so we want to make sure that we're not engaging in too much risk. But there were some things that we learned from that process. I mean, some basic things like, if we are a small city, getting a solicitation 60 days before it's due, and we've got to be able to write this thing out and get all the partners in place, is next to impossible. So like, one of the things we did was we put out a grant in 2021, and we said, it's going to be the same exact language in 2022. So if you're one of those cities who can't apply in 60 days, but you can apply if you have a year in 60 days, come see us next year. And once you've gotten your partners figured out, once you've gotten your materials together. And so I think some of that is really important, is being able to listen. I think the people people who are accountable at the very top are really critical to that. But being able to learn what about our processes don't make sense and make it harder for the communities that we're trying to most reach access those resources.
And I'm sorry, sir, you're not going to be able to ask your question. The mayor does have to get out of here, but not before we hear from Jocelyn Fry, who's going to close us out. Thank you all to Shalonda Young, Kelly Burton, Mayor Frank Scott, and Angela Hanks for this great conversation.
Thank you so much. I will be very quick because I don't want you to miss a flight. First of all, I just want to acknowledge our panels and our fabulous moderator, Jonathan Capehart. Thank you. And we have a wonderful panel, Director Young, Angela Hanks, Mayor Scott, Kelly Burton. Thank you so much for your brilliance. It was fabulous. And we, I think, all benefited from it. I also know what it means to keep people from food. We have food downstairs. I want to say two quick things. The first is that we all know that when the economy is faring well, it is great, but we also know that Black communities are always left behind. And Angela spoke about this. When even Black folks experience the benefits are often less robust, they're less durable, and the disparities still exist, whether you're talking about disparities in wealth, access to capital, earnings, and if you are not careful, they become entrenched for Black families. And our task is not to normalize disparities, but to address them head on. And so I believe Mayor Scott talked about being intentional and being conscious about the investments that we need for Black communities, but also for our economy. We're spending a lot of time talking about Black folks, but we do so because we know if we invest in Black communities, that actually not only helps them, it helps grow our economy. The second thing I want to say is that we are talking a lot about Black communities and the economy, but it is also important for us to recognize that the solutions for Black communities is not just about the policy ideas. That's important, but that's not the only thing. We also must be really focused on the current climate that we are operating in and the context in which we are trying to help Black communities. And we need to be clear about the opposition that we're facing. The sobering reality is that we are in the midst of an aggressive, well-funded push to erode progress for Black people. It is an effort emboldened by extremists whose power is rooted in division. And while the rhetoric may be draped in, the effort may be draped in rhetoric that attempts to even redefine what discrimination is, it is really an effort to maintain and preserve a status quo that is steeped in racism and inequity, and to create a rationale for why that inequity makes sense. And in a moment when we are experiencing this real deep need to invest in Black communities, we are also dealing with, I think Angela referred to it, this moment of incredible, extraordinary pushback. A pushback to deny and rewrite history, sanitize the perniciousness and prevalence of racism, and to create a narrative that devalues Black people and minimizes their oppression. And even in this moment, Angela spoke to this is not a time to pull back. It is not a time to be shy. It is a time to be unapologetically bold and to be centering Black folks in the conversation. I appreciate Director Young talking about the investments of the administration. We need to do more, not less. And we need to, Kelly spoke about this, also focus and have hard questions about what is the infrastructure necessary to ensure that the progress that we make today actually lasts for the long time. So I'm so happy, in addition to being here with all of you, being here with my friend Patrick, the CAP family. It is always a great honor to spend time with you to co-host this. Also my CAP family, and so thank you for that. And thank you for all of you for making your time to be with us today. Please go downstairs and enjoy the reception.